Revenge films.
I live in a house with my husband and my 3-year-old son, as a happy family of 3. We had a storage space on the floor of our kitchen, but since we don't use it, we called a contractor to cover it up with flooring. We weren't allowed to be home during the construction, so as we were discussing how to kill time that day, our neighbor's wife contacted us. Hi, Ashley. Would you like to have a barbecue together sometime? My parents just sent us a lot of meat from my hometown, but since it's just me and my husband, we won't be able to eat it all. We would love that, but are you sure? You can always put the meat in the freezer and it'll last a long time. No, we would love to share it with you. Well then, maybe we'll bring some seafood. That would be great, I love seafood. I'll speak to my husband and see if we can set a date. Sounds great. Our neighbors have been friendly to us ever since we moved in, and now the wife and I have become friends. My husband also goes to play golf with her husband sometimes, so as soon as I got home, I spoke with my husband about it. Hey honey, the wife next door invited us to barbecue with them sometime soon. What do you think?
That's a great idea. It's getting warm out too, so the weather is perfect.
I want to eat lots of meat too. Great. Well then, how about this Saturday? We've already booked the contractor to come fix the flooring that day, and maybe by the time we're done enjoying the barbecue, the construction will be done too.
Good point. That way we don't have to go far or force ourselves to kill time outside of the house. Sounds perfect.
Well then, I'll give her a call and set the plans. And so the weekend rolled around. The weather was great that day, and it wasn't too hot, and it was just the perfect day for a barbecue. We sure got lucky with the weather. I know. Oh, here's the seafood set. Wow, this looks delicious. Here's the meat set from us. It looks amazing. Let's cut up the vegetables and get started. I'll help too.
Oh, little William, what a good son. You can already help out your mommy and daddy?
Yeah.
Well then, why don't you help your dad and me get everything ready?
I will. While the wife and I cut the vegetables and got the ingredients ready, the husband's got the grill fired up. Everything was ready in no time, and we got to barbecuing.
Here, Will, the meat is ready.
Yay! I want the meat. This beef is delicious. The seafood is great too.
All we need is an ice cold beer and it would be perfect.
It's only noon, honey. Sheesh. We were eating and laughing and having a great time when suddenly...
Excuse me.
Oh yes, we've been waiting for you. Thank you for coming today. The contractor arrived, so I showed him to our kitchen and returned to the barbecue. My son and all of us were full and thoroughly enjoyed the barbecue, and my husband and our neighbor were in deep conversation about golf. That was when the neighbor's wife noticed. Hey, where did your son go? What? Wasn't he just around here? I just saw him over there a second ago. We all started looking around the area, but we couldn't find my son anywhere. The neighbor's wife went to look inside of the house, while my husband looked around the yard, and I went to check inside of our house. William, where are you? If you're hiding, can you please come out? Sometimes my son likes to play hide and seek, so I figured if I waited, he'd come out. But I didn't see or hear him anywhere. That was when I saw cigarettes on the front porch. Neither my husband nor I smoke cigarettes, so I went to find the contractor. Excuse me, but I think you may have dropped some cigarettes.
Oh, sorry about that. Well then, I'm finished here, so I'll be leaving now. As for the invoice, the company will send it to you within the week.
Thank you very much. Did you by any chance see my son?
Your son? Who knows? I haven't seen him though.
Perhaps he had another job to get to, but the contractor grabbed his belongings and quickly disappeared out the door. The 4 of us continued looking for my son, but no matter where we looked, we couldn't find him anywhere.
Did you find him?
Nope, he wasn't over there. Where could he have gone? Could it be kidnapping?
No way! I mean, we were all in the yard having a barbecue. There's no way somebody could have stuck beneath our noses and kidnapped him.
Why don't we contact the police just in case? We've looked everywhere and we can't find him. Something is wrong.
You're right. We called the police immediately and explained the situation in detail. They sent out their forces to find him, using police cars and motorcycles as well as multiple officers on foot. But the sun started to set and my son was still nowhere to be found. What do we do? He's still so small and we don't know where he is or what happened.
It's okay, Ashley. Everything's gonna be okay. Try to stay calm.
Maybe he was in some kind of accident or... I was overwhelmed with fear and my husband tried desperately to calm me down. My husband and I will do one more lap around our houses. Despite having such a fun time at the barbecue, with my son's disappearance, everything had turned into a panic. We kept searching and searching, but to no avail, and I started to get scared that maybe he really was kidnapped. I'm going to take another look around the house again.
All right, and I'll look around the outside.
We had all looked hundreds of times at this point, but I thought maybe we could have missed something somewhere. And I looked into every closet and small corner that a small child might be able to sneak into. At that moment, I felt like I heard the crying voice of a child from inside the house. Wait a second. Was that William? Or am I hearing things? I swear I didn't hear that earlier. That's what I thought, but when I listened really closely again, I knew that I could hear my son's crying voice. William? William, where are you? Mommy? I'm so scared. Mommy! I felt a chill go through my bones. That was because I heard my son's voice coming from underneath the floor. Surely not, I thought as I peeled up the carpet. But then, from the flooring that had just been fixed today, I could hear my son's crying voice. William? Is that you? Is that where you are? Mommy, I'm so scared. It was already dark outside, and if he was under the floor, then there was definitely no light there. I couldn't understand why or how he ended up down there. But now that I found him, I immediately called out for my husband and the others. I found William!
What? Where?
Looks like he's trapped underneath the floor.
What? Why the hell is he down there?
We all gathered on top of the floor that my son was trapped under, and my husband called the contractor from earlier. However, it was already late and nobody was picking up the phone.
Damn it! What the hell is going on here?
My son was still crying underneath the dark and cold floor. The floor had been professionally constructed, so there was nothing that the four of us could do with only our hands to try to get him out.
Hang in there, William. Your mommy and daddy are right here.
I'm so scared, Daddy. After that, since we couldn't get a hold of the contractor, I called the company headquarters. It was pretty late at night, but there was an employee who just happened to be working overtime. They don't normally pick up the phone past 5 p.m., but because I was calling so many times, she ended up answering the phone. Hello? We had your company redo our flooring today, but my son is trapped inside. We haven't been able to get a hold of the person in charge. Please help us. What? Did you just say your son is trapped? Can you please explain to me in detail what's going on? I didn't even have much to explain besides telling this person that my son had been trapped underneath the flooring, and that it seems like the contractor in charge had administered the flooring while my son was still under there, and now we can't get a hold of him. I got it. We will handle this on our side immediately. I felt a slight relief thanks to her quick response. I hung up the phone and went back to the flooring where the four of us did our best to talk to William.
William, don't worry. You'll be out of there in no time.
Will, everything's gonna be okay. We're all right here, so don't be scared.
We did our best to keep talking to him, but on the other side of the flooring was a pitch black hole. And for a little child like William, it must have been so terrifying. He kept crying and crying to no end. Then we stopped hearing his crying voice, so the neighbor's wife got scared. Hey, I can't hear him anymore, can you? Is he okay? William? Hey, Will, are you okay? Can you hear Mommy's voice?
Did something happen? Is he alright?
There's no telling. Maybe he was exhausted from crying and fell asleep. Anytime my son cries a lot, he'll fall asleep through his sniffles and hiccups.
My husband had a point. My son was fully in his tantrum phase right now. And anytime he was in a bad mood, he would scream and cry and throw a fit. And after he would cry his face off, he would get tired and fall asleep. And that was the daily routine. There was a good chance that over the hours that he had been trapped in the darkness, he had been crying and sleeping and repeating the cycle. I see. Well, if he's asleep, then maybe he's feeling a little less scared. That's true. Surely anyone would realize. I mean, that's how Ashley found him here too, right? Yeah. Why didn't he notice? I don't get it. For a brief moment, I thought maybe he forcefully trapped him down there. But we met this contractor for the first time today, and I couldn't think of a reason why he would do something like that. As we were talking, the contractor from earlier and someone who looked like they might be his boss arrived at our house as soon as we looked up.
We are so terribly sorry about this. We'll get your son out immediately.
Next to him, the contractor in charge looked irritated, but he looked down and said,
I am very sorry about this incident.
The two of them jumped to the floor to get to work. When they finally peeled back the flooring, just like my husband had said, my son had fallen asleep after crying for so long, and he grabbed him and pulled him out. Oh, William, thank goodness.
Does he have any injuries? Because it was pitch black. He might have hit something or got hurt.
My husband checked all over William's body, but luckily it didn't seem like there were any big injuries or bruises either. My son finally woke up, and as soon as he opened his eyes, Daddy! Daddy! He said and started bawling again.
You were so brave in there, William. I'm so proud of you.
We'd never used the storage space nor opened it in years, so between that and William's sweat and tears, he was covered in dust and a little trash all over his body.
Well, why don't we take a bath and get you all cleaned up?
Yeah, I feel so sticky.
All right, let's go.
My husband took our son, who was covered in sweat and dust, straight to the bath. I instead turned to the contractor. Would you care to explain yourself? How the hell did this happen? When you were doing construction, did you not realize that my son was under the floor? He avoided eye contact as he replied.
I didn't notice.
I was irritated. How is that possible? Earlier, when I heard my son's voice and I peeled back the carpet, I saw the floor had been hit with a hammer multiple times. The flooring also had many dents in it too, so there's no way that a child wouldn't raise their voice with this much hammering and noise. Especially our son, who is very sensitive to noise to the point where he will come running to his dad at just the sound of a truck passing by the house.
I wasn't hitting it that hard. Don't you think there's a possibility that he didn't notice?
Are you serious? These nails into this hardwood floor and you didn't need to hit that hard? I ran to get the hammer that we owned in the house and started hitting the floor. As expected, the sound echoed throughout the house. So you're telling me that my son heard this noise from below and didn't say anything?
Well, I didn't hear anything.
What is with this attitude? The boss finally spoke up again.
What is with your attitude? Do you have any realization of what you've done? You trapped our customer's precious son under the floor.
But I didn't know. And the son crawled in there himself, didn't he? I don't know if you can say that it's entirely my fault. I didn't notice, so that can't be helped, can it?
How dare you! Just as I was about to explode, my husband came back with our son. William, did you talk to anyone from down there? Yeah, I yelled and I yelled that I was scared. This is what my son's saying, so...
Oh yeah, the noise of the hammer was so loud that I couldn't hear him. Since the hammering is pretty loud, maybe they drowned out your son's voice? You said it yourself, didn't you? That it echoes? That's why I couldn't hear anything from below.
My son continued to cry until he was completely exhausted. So for how many hours were you hitting that hammer consistently into our floor? Usually once the flooring is finished, you don't need to hit it that much, and you should have been able to hear his voice clearly. Are you trying to tell us that that's how little care you were putting into this work? Contractor tried to come up with a response, but the words were not coming out of his mouth.
Don't tell me that you knew there was a kid down there and you still continue closing the floor.
I would never do such a thing. Actually, I was listening to music.
Listening to music? While on the job? What the hell were you thinking?
I'm sorry.
That's what the contractor said, but then I remembered something and I asked him, were you really listening to music?
Yeah, I was.
Really? Or were you listening to the live broadcast of the horse races?
What?
His face suddenly went pale. Earlier, when I found the cigarettes, I also saw a small note on the ground next to them. On it were multiple options written down for horse betting. I threw it away because I thought it was trash. But instead of music, you were listening to the live broadcast of today's horse races, weren't you? And that's why you couldn't hear my son's voice, even though you were working. And in that time, my son had cried so much that he got exhausted and fell asleep.
You bastard! You even lied to me?
No, definitely not, sir. Like I said, I was listening to music.
Well then, show me your pockets!
The boss reached right into the contractor's pockets. In them was proof that he had been betting on the horse races that day.
Are you trying to tell me that even still you were listening to music?
Contractor seemed to finally admit defeat as he fell to his knees.
I'm very sorry.
As it turns out, it was exactly as I predicted. While he was working, he was listening to the broadcast of the races, and he couldn't hear my son's voice who had crawled into the flooring without him realizing it. As for the dents in the floor, after he had already replaced the flooring, he realized that it wasn't done properly and some parts were uneven, but he was too lazy to redo it, so he used the hammer to try to flatten it out and assumed that we wouldn't notice once we put the carpet over it. While he was doing that, he was listening to the horse races and found out that he had won. That's why he wanted to go and turn his ticket in and ran out the door so quickly. As for why he wasn't picking up the phone when I called, since he won some money from his bets, he had gone straight to a lounge to celebrate. When he saw that I'd called multiple times, he assumed that I'd found the dents in the floor, but he didn't want to deal with those complaints, so he thought that he just left it, then somebody else in the office would deal with it eventually. Then all he'd have to do was tolerate a small lecturing before moving on. However, since I was able to get a hold of his company, everything got exposed. Even though he was ignoring my calls, he felt like they would get into a lot more trouble if he didn't pick up the call from his company. But when he answered, he was dragged back out to our house. Of course his boss was livid.
What the hell do you think you're doing? Listening to the horse races while you are meant to be focused on your work. That is beyond unacceptable. And on top of that, you tried to lie. Truly, I am so incredibly sorry about this. You, get down on your knees and apologize right now. I'm very sorry about this.
I had already destroyed some of the floor to try to get William out, so that, including the original cost of the repair, was of course fully compensated. They also promised to pay us a fee and damages for what they did to my son. Not surprisingly, the contractor was fired immediately. After the incident, the company launched an investigation into him and found out that, regardless of him being on a job, he had previously been working while listening to live broadcasts of the horse races as well. Whenever he would win, he would prematurely wrap up his work and leave the customers in a haste. On the other hand, anytime he would lose the bets, he would get so irritated that he didn't care about his work and would sloppily finish it up to go home. Of course, if he was putting on such a little care into his repairs, the customers would notice and contact the company. Those complaints hadn't made their way back to the top, but apparently there were a lot of complaints on jobs that the contractor had done and that the office employees had their hands full dealing with them.
What the hell is with your company's work? Nothing was finished properly. Who the hell's in charge over there?
We're so terribly sorry for this. We'll be sure to discipline the staff accordingly and ensure that this never happens again. We'll send you another employee to fix it immediately.
Please, I hope you don't inconvenience me any further than this.
Absolutely. Once again, I'm very sorry about this. Yet whenever the office employee would try to talk to this contractor about it, we got another complaint. Please do your work properly. Despite any of the warnings he received.
Yeah, be more careful.
And he would ignore her and move on. As for why this would repeatedly happen and yet the boss was never notified, the contractor had previously gone up to the office employee.
This is actually a secret, but the company's CEO is my family. So if you even try to report this any higher, it might be putting you in an even worse position. You understand? Because the CEO really loves me.
Is that so? You're the CEO's family? And he had lied to threaten her.
Yeah, but the CEO told me not to tell anyone about this, so it's probably better for you if you don't tell anyone either. Otherwise, your head might roll, because you and I are the only ones who know about this. And if I hadn't said anything, then everybody will know that it was you who opened your mouth, you see? That's why you better watch your mouth.
Yes, sir, I swear I won't say anything. So despite how many complaints she was receiving, she was stuck by being told that he was the CEO's favorite and wasn't able to tell her boss. However, she felt that she had to say something after this incident. And despite knowing that her job might be on the line, she told her boss everything about the complaints up until now. I know that he's the CEO's family, but I think that this is taking it way too far. Our customers trust us, and that's why they come to us for work, and yet he doesn't do it properly, and is betraying not only them, but also the company. I also feel bad for the second person that has to go fix it, and get yelled at by the customer for something that they didn't even do. She was prepared to lose her job when she told her boss, but then...
What do you mean, the CEO's family? The CEO's daughter is currently studying abroad overseas, and I'm certain none of the CEO's relatives or the relatives' families have joined our company.
But he said it was a secret, so maybe that's why nobody knows.
The CEO and I have been friends for a very long time, so I've met his daughter many times, as well as other family members. I know them all.
What? But he told me that he was family, and that's why I was so scared I would get fired and I couldn't say anything. I'm so sorry. And that's how the boss found out the truth. Of course, the boss was furious and went straight to the CEO to talk about that lie, in addition to our incident as well as the hundreds of other complaints against this guy. He was immediately called to the office and fired on the spot. He's the worst kind of guy, making up lies and threatening people just to save himself. After that, because he had done such careless work and damaged the reputation of the company, I heard that he was going to be sued by the company for a hefty cost of damages. I heard about all of this from the neighbor's wife a few months later. That's because it turns out that the office employee was her cousin. At the time of the incident, I was so worried about my son that I didn't think about what company it was. But when I was catching up with the neighbor's wife later on, I found out that it was her cousin and she told me everything. Apparently, because of that contractor's poor work, the company gained a reputation for being untrustworthy and careless. And they even had large contracts destroyed because of it. I can only imagine what they'll be suing him for, but I'm sure it can't be covered by any amount of winnings from horse races. Especially since I'm sure he's already spent most of that at the lounge. Looks like karma got him all at once, but that's what he gets. My son was small and curious as a child, so he must have snuck into that open floor while the contractor had stepped away. However, if he hadn't been wearing any headphones, there's no way he wouldn't have noticed, and none of this would have happened. I shouldn't have to say this, but listening to the horse races while working is obviously unacceptable. And there's no way that a company would allow it either. When I think about how scared a small child must have been trapped inside such a claustrophobic and completely dark place for so long, it makes my blood boil. However, we made sure to scold our son for climbing into such a place on his own.
William, it's a good thing to be curious, but you can't go into places like that without telling your mom and dad first. Do you understand?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Daddy. Everyone was very worried about you. More than anything, I was just relieved, though, that we found my son and that he was safe. We were also lucky that the weather was so great that day. If it had been too hot or too cold, my young son's life may have been more in danger. We were so lucky and so relieved that this terrifying incident ended without any injuries or threats to our son's life.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.